One. Thanks, everybody. 12:02. So we'll start. Thanks very much for attending today. I appreciate you taking your time out. This is actually a really important webinar, and we've had a lot of registrants come and join us. We've got close to 160 that have registered. So appreciate all of you that have actually turned up live. Just to let you know that we will be recording this session. There will be a transcript available. We will also be providing copies of the slides, so everyone has a PDF copy. And we have enabled a Q&A chat function. And with the number of participants, it may be difficult to get to all of the questions if they arise. If not, rest assured that pop them in the chat as you think about them, and we will actually collate all of those and then create a frequently asked questions document that will circulate with all of the people that have registered. So that's just a little bit how we'll run things. We've also got a couple of resources that if people are interested in, we'll discuss those later on in the session as well that might help us navigate this change. So, welcome, thank you. My name is Amanda Higgins and I've been with the Fair Farms team for nearly 3 years now in the role of the Workplace Relations Specialist. Today we're going to cover the C14 decision, and it's a decision that was made by the Fair Work Commission regarding classifications in the modern awards. So essentially we know that the Horticultural Award is impacted by this, and the changes that have come down are actually going to come and take effect as of the 1st of April. So we've got a few days to get things organised. In today's session, we're going to do a little bit of backgrounding work. We're going to talk about what is C14 and how it relates to the Horticultural Award. We'll find out why the review happened. We'd like to discuss how industry bodies actually did respond. Most important thing for you guys is how do the changes affect you as employers? What do businesses need to do to calculate these timeframes, etc.? And what steps do you need to take now to ensure that you remain compliant? If we've got time, we'll have a look at doing some questions at the end. But as I said, we may not get to time. There may be many questions, but if not, we'll collate all of those and we'll put out a document over the next few days. So kicking off, what is the C14? C14 and the C13 pay rates were actually historically the lowest two classification levels in some awards. Initially, these rates were intended as transitional and introductory rates only, but the Fair Work Commission has now reviewed and modified their use in 47 modern awards. So in the Hort Award, C14 level actually equals the level 1 classification that we're all used to, and the C13 equals a level 2 classification. As at today's rate, level 1 is $23.46 per hour, and that's for a full-time or part-time employee, and level 2 is $24.10 per hour. And these are the ones that you'll obviously add a casual loading onto of the 25% when they're a casual employee. So this C14 decision actually changes how employees will progress between these two levels. You'll note that the level 1 pay rate at $23.46 is often what we will start employees at when they commence employment with us. And you'll note that when you give an employee the Fair Work Information Statement, the national minimum wage that's actually described on the Fair Work Information Statement is $24.10. This has often been a point of confusion for employers and employees, and the Fair Work Information Statement strictly is available to those, and the pay rate that's on that is for those employees who are not covered by an award or an enterprise agreement. So this has caused a little bit of confusion in the past, but and the horticultural level 1 pay rate has been under the national minimum wage. So part of this review process was to step that up. So in 2019, the Fair Work Commission began reviewing the modern awards to assess the classification rates. The goal was actually to eliminate and and eliminate the indefinite introductory rate and ensure there were some clear progression pathways. So in the current award classifications, it does speak about progressing from level 1 to level 2, but it doesn't really put any stringent rules around it. The 2019 review stemmed from the wage review decision, and it has continued through multiple determinations. So back on the 19th of November last year, 19th of November 2024, the Fair Work Commission actually made its final ruling, and the Horticultural Award was required to have these changes implemented by the 1st of April this year. This is a bit of an excerpt of one of the directions. So in April 2023, a directions hearing was held and a provisional review was published in the September 2023. As a provisional review, it actually provided the opportunity for organisations and for industry to provide submissions either in support of or against the proposed changes for the Fair Work Commission to consider. So what did that actually mean? Out of this determination, the Fair Work Commission determined that the lowest classification in any modern award should be at least the C13 rate, which is our level 2. Any rate below the C13 must be an entry level rate with a clear progression timeframe. The transition period for the entry level rates can't exceed 6 months, is what the determination came out with. And the Horticultural Award, unfortunately, only has a 3-month transition period. So the changes, like I said before, are coming into effect and will be effective as of 1st of April. So if we have a look at what industry did, we know that there were some provisional views. We had the opportunity to present some submissions. So during this time, industry organisations actually filed submissions opposing the provisional view of the Fair Work Commission. We had the Australian Fresh Produce Alliance, AFPA, which is made up of Australia's major fresh produce growers and suppliers. They represent Australia's largest fruit and veggie growers, and they negotiate with government and retailers on priority issues. We had the AI Group provide some submissions, and the AI Group is a peak national employer organisation which has represented businesses across Australia for over 150 years. And of course, we had National Farmers Federation, who also submitted some opposing views. NFF represents the farming sector in addressing those key workplace issues, such as the annual wage decisions and chronic labour shortages. So what was it that industry was actually asking for on behalf of our growers? Some of those key areas of the submission points was that seasonal workers engaged on a temporary basis, primarily performing fruit and veggie picking tasks, should remain at level 1 indefinitely, as the majority of short-term employees are not in ongoing employment. They're engaged seasonally or they're engaged at peak periods and are casuals. That was one viewpoint put forward. One of the other viewpoints put forward was that level 1 to level 2 shouldn't be based on industry experience, but tailor it more, that it should actually occur after 3 months experience in a particular task or 3 months with the same employer. Other key areas was that experience really should relate to the same type of crop. You know, when you're picking strawberries versus macadamias, it's a very different type of skill set, and you'll have different productivity levels. So there was a submission saying that it should be a tree crop or a ground crop, and we even know that between those two things, they're varied far and wide. One of the other submission points back to Fair Work Commission was that industry experience means experience within the horticulture industry, and that 3 months should have at least been obtained within the last 12 months. You're looking at speed, productivity, and trying to retain skills, which is really important in the work that we do. And that one of the other submissions was that the 3 months experience should actually be equivalised to 494 hours in respect to casual or part-time workers. that experience then should have been gained within the last 3 years. So 494 hours is the equivalent of 3 months full time. So despite industry opposition, the Fair Work Commission actually held up all of the proposed changes. So what does that mean? It means that on the 19th of November, the Fair Work Commission released its final determination. It meant that there are new rules and there are new pay rates for introductory classifications in the Hort Award that are going to be coming into effect. Now, we've got links to be able to access the full ruling for those of you who are interested, with links on the Fair Work Commission's website. So what does it mean for you as a business? What does it mean for you as an employer? It now means that there's actually mandatory progression from level 1 to level 2, and that is after 3 months industry experience. It also means that the classification levels have also too now been updated, and it means that level 1 must progress to level 2 after 3 months accrued either with the same employer, gained over a period of time, or something else to that effect. But we'll delve into that a little bit deeper. The current classification structure that we have within the award, and I know this slide's going to be really hard to read, but if we can note the last bullet point, in level 1 in our current classification, it says that an employee at this level is a new employee or as an existing employee performing work within this grade who is undertaking training so as to enable advancement to level 2. Now, what is training? Is it structured training? Is it a traineeship? Is it an apprenticeship? We don't know. The award was really quite vague on what that looked like. And in the indicative duties under that same classification level in the current award, it says that the employee may perform work at undertaking structured training so as to enable advancement to level 2. So when it comes to the level 2, you would expect that they would have undertaken some kind of horticulture course, some on-the-job training that was strictly documented, but the award really didn't instruct businesses on how to go about that and what to actually do. So when referring to the classifications of the duties within these awards, it's really important to analyse what tasks the employees are undertaking and how long they've been undertaking them for. Currently in the level 2 is that there could have been a loss of pay to engage lower duties. That's our current award, which is, we know, is going to change come 1st of April. So what is going to come 1st of April? The award classification is going to stipulate that an employee must progress to level 2 after no more than 3 months of industry experience. Level 1 duties are also going to be transposed into the level 2 classification. So they're actually going to be contained in level 1. They'll be transposed and incorporated into level 2 duties as well once that employee has had 3 months of industry experience. We're not talking about structured training any longer. We're not talking about traineeships. We're not talking about anything that is particularly documented, and we're certainly not talking about via the same employer. So the definition of industry experience, this is probably really important to understand. It means that any experience an employee has gained in the horticulture industry, picking, planting, harvesting, regardless of the crop type, applies. If the work was actually paid for underneath the horticultural award, that's deemed the experience. The time frame for when that employee actually will have gained that experience. If I was a backpacker back in 1988 and I was going around picking grapes, would that experience apply now? Yes, it would. There are no historical cutoffs for when that experience may have actually been gained. So the applicable time frame is in total 3 calendar months. It's cumulative as to when an employee gained that experience. So they may have done 4 weeks worth of work in 2017, 4 weeks of work in 2019, 5 weeks worth of work in 2022. And then that time frame, if the employee happens to provide some evidence, either pay slips to that effect, references, etc., then those employees would be eligible to sit in a level 2 pay rate. There are some things businesses that would do and should do, and I would highly recommend it, and that would be doing things like reference checks and those sorts of things, particularly if an employee is stating that they worked a long time ago. You want to be able to cover yourself, and if you are going to pay somebody at a level 2 pay rate, you want to make sure that there is some evidence or documentation to validate that. So that might come in the way of pay slips from an employee and reference checks with previous employers. The other thing when we're talking about time frame for experience, and this is really important to understand as well, it means that if an employee was actually employed from 1st of August 2024 to the 15th of November 2024, so a bit over 3 months, but they only worked 5 hours each week, that time frame, because it's based on calendar months of work, would actually be considered relevant experience. It's not an accumulation of the number of hours they've worked within the industry, but the time frame for which they were actually engaged within industry work. So this slide here is just to break it down a little bit further. It means the experience that really may have been gained at any point historically across all horticulture industry employers. It's not dependent upon a total number of accumulated hours, and it is something that you as a business will also need to manage and keep track of with your current employees as well as your new hires to ensure that you've got pay point progression occurring accurately. So these pay rate changes are coming into effect as of the 1st of April. It's going to be from the first full pay period in April. So if your roster runs across from the 30th of March, 31st of March, 1st of April, for example, it will be the first full pay period that this actually then does come into effect. So if we have a look at it, level 1 is $23.46. The next pay point up is $24.10. It's an increase of 64 cents an hour or 2.75%. And then those paying on the hourly rate for casuals, $29.33, moving up to a level 2 pay rate of $30.13. So it's an 80 cents increase per hour, once again, 2.75%. So you need to plan for that. And I know it's always tricky because it eats into margin every single step of the way. But we have that pay rate to consider for your current employees who are eligible to be lifted to level 2. And then you'll also need to be mindful within your budgeting that come the 1st of July, we are going to have the usual minimum wages increase impact on 1st of July as well. That may be around about that 3.5% or so mark. So you'll have to really try and plan what that looks like with your payroll teams. So what is it that you need to do? So there's some really important next steps. You must review your current employee records, identify those employees who are approaching the 3 months of employment and determine, did they actually come to you with any previous industry experience as well? So workers with that industry experience and experience at yours may need immediate reclassification come the 1st of April. Have a look at all of those engagement periods who are being paid at a level 1. Make sure that you are then having a chat with them and make sure that you then consider what they've done in the past, whether that's something you've got to go back and revalidate via a resume or a conversation. But if they've previously been with you for 3 months, you will have to uplift them. If they've been with you for a shorter period of time, but they've had industry experience elsewhere, you'll have to make sure that you've got your timeframes right to ensure that you're remaining compliant. The next thing you'll have to do is talk about these changes with those affected employees. Have a meeting, have a discussion, and then notify them in writing as to why there is the change occurring. Let them know, explain to them why that there is the progression from level 1 to level 2. As part of the resources for attending today, we've actually got a template letter that we've drawn up. It'll be very basic, where you can pop in your own business name and the staff member's name, etc. It just outlines that because they're an eligible employee, with the timeframes that it will be progressing, and then you can just delete whether they're a full-time, part-time or casual, and we've got the appropriate pay rates in there for you as well to make life a bit easier. The next thing that's really important for you to do is actually talk to your payroll people or jump into your payroll systems and adjust them accordingly. Make sure that you are putting people at the appropriate level and ensure that that level change is reflected on their payslip as well, so they can see that they've gone to a level 2, that they just haven't had a pay rise with no understanding as to why that's actually occurred. Make sure that you have got a level 2 classification on your payslip, so it will help you be able to justify if there's ever a query afterwards from Fair Work, did you actually undertake this uplift from level 1 to level 2? And you've got that very clearly identified on their documentation. As a matter of best practice also, if they're a casual employee, really try and pull apart that payslip to have the casual loading as a separate line item on there. It's something that I'm noticing that's really important that come Fair Farms audits or any query that you're getting from Fair Work, is that any clearly identifiable allowance or loading is separately identified on a payslip. So for casual employees, it might be sitting at that 25%. It may actually be that in the notation section on a payslip, you can then describe that the casual pay rate includes a 25% loading. You don't want to get stuck with that potentially being a contentious point. So ensure that your systems are going to reflect the new pay rates, and then bear in mind you're going to have to check back with Fair Work, or if you're a Fair Farms member, come June, as soon as we get notified of what those new pay rates are, come the 1st of July, we'll share that with all of our Fair Farms members as well, so that you can get prepared with that additional change. Train your HR staff so that they're across what's really important in regards to those Fair Work requirements. And the other really key part is train your supervisors and your team leaders out there, so that if your team members are actually going through and undertaking additional tasks or they're learning new skills, check the classification rates. Make sure you are classifying them correctly from the start. Something that we happen to see all of the time, people actually don't delve right down into what those indicative tasks might look like. This next slide is about hiring new employees. So really check that you've got the right pay level. Find out the tasks that you want them to undertake, and then explain the level 1 and level 2 classifications to them clearly. Ask them about their prior experience, do the reference checks, ask them if they've got any evidence, if they say that they've got evidence, if it's recent, ask if they've got some pay slips to demonstrate that they've had 3 months industry experience for you, and alternatively, do some reference checks as well, which is really key to having a good team. During employment, track their experience, track what it is that they're doing for you, communicate the pay change when that actually moves for those employees who are then progressing from a level 1 to level 2, and keep your pay records for 7 years. So if there's ever any question, as a rule that you need to do anyway, you need to keep these documents for that 7-year period of time. So train your team, train your payroll staff, get a line of sight as to what that looks like prior to the 1st of April, and make sure that you've got the changes ready to occur then. Employers who are employing underneath an enterprise agreement, it's really important that you go have a look at those as well to make sure that those introductory rates or transitional rates meet the base requirements as per the relevant award. So, you know, this C14 level was actually never meant to be an ongoing pay rate. It was really designed that it was to introduce somebody to the industry, to provide a stepping stone up into the business. But the Hort Award, unlike some other awards, didn't tell us what to do. It was fairly silent on it. So for many, many years, many employers have actually just been paying people at a level 1 for a really long period of time even though they might undertake some level 2 tasks, if the majority of them are at level 1, we know that the progression hasn't happened because there hasn't been a structure around it. Now there is. So as an overview for your compliance, review the classifications that you're paying your employees at. One that we come across quite often are employees operating tractors. And in the award classification, it's really tricky because it uses actually kilowatts for the tractor rather than a horsepower. So in a level 2, it talks of a 70 kilowatt tractor, which equals around about a 93 horsepower tractor. Make sure that you understand those breaks in those classifications to ensure that you're compliant. Update your systems and your documentation. If you've got employment contracts, do a variation letter, let employees know, do that variation letter. If you don't and they're all casual, give them that you're welcome to use the template that we provide you, so at least they have that understanding in writing, and then make sure that you are able to implement those changes by the deadline. So the 3 resources that we've got a template letter to advise of the step from level 1 to level 2 progression. We're happy to share that with everybody. We've also got a step-by-step guide for onboarding new hires, what it is you should be asking for, the information that you will be keeping, and the documents that you should be actually keeping on file as well. And we have a hiring compliance checklist to help you ensure that you're maintaining Fair Work compliance as well. So happy to share those. They're all really quite generic, applicable to all businesses. I'm not too sure. I haven't gone into our Q&A as to whether we've had many questions pop in there yet. We've had a couple, I see. So we're happy to compile a list, but if we've got some time, if we don't have many questions, we don't have too many, which is all right. We've got some. If we've got some time, but I think we're running out, we're happy to address those in writing, and we will send out a frequently asked questions list and email it out to all participants over the next few days so we can address any concerns. And really, if we are doing that, if anyone has got anything urgently that you'd like addressed, please put your hand up. We do have some that have been published in our question and answer box, which I think is probably best to go through and we'll answer in writing. Some are regarding the PALM scheme, etc. Some are talking about seasonal workers that are not PALM scheme. So best that we address those in writing. We'll share those through. But other than that, I actually think we're close to time. So I'd like to thank everybody. I feel like I've whizzed through it, but I know that the 30 minutes has kind of been taken up already. I appreciate you all attending. I'm hoping that you understand that this is now a mandatory requirement that we progress employees from level 1 to level 2. There's not a way of optioning out of that at all. You can't disengage an employee and then rehire to subvert your obligations. That won't fly. And then we'll have to have it as a watch this space as to where there are going to be further changes from the award going from a level 2 to level 3 at some point in the future. But the most important thing is understand those classification schedules. In the Hort Award, they're under Schedule A online, right down the bottom on the left-hand side menu if you are jumping on. If anyone's got any questions about any of this, please feel free to shoot me an email directly. Happy to either direct you to those links or provide you with info one-on-one. Reach out to us, and for all Fair Farms members, we're certainly here to assist. But what we do want to make sure is that you understand what those obligations are and that we can help you maintain compliance through this journey. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time, really appreciate your attention and your attendance. We'll circulate out the slides. We'll circulate out a link to the recording. Perhaps we might put it on our website or we'll share it with everybody. But best of luck with implementing the changes. And as I said, if anyone's got any questions or you want clarification on anything, please feel free to reach out directly. I'm more than happy to have a chat with anyone. Thanks all. Wish you all have a good day.